Part 1. The Galactic Patent Archive existed as a moon. Not a natural moon, but one built across 17,000 years by the combined efforts of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. It orbited a neutral world called Consensus Prime, where no wars had ever been fought and no blood had ever been spilled. The archive held the memory of invention itself. Every useful thing ever created by thinking beings had its record there, stored in crystalline matrices that would outlast stars. Archivists moved through the corridors of this vast place with the careful grace of a being made from living crystal. His body caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. His mind held 700 years of meticulous work. He had cataloged inventions from species that no longer existed. He had preserved the designs of tools whose purposes had been forgotten. He had served the archive longer than most civilizations remembered their own histories. Today, however, faced a problem that made his crystalline structure vibrate with stress. The archive's governing council had issued a decree. 3 new wings would be constructed, an expansion that happened only once every 1,000 years. These wings would honor the species whose inventions had most changed galactic civilization in the current era. The honor carried weight. It meant recognition. It meant status. It meant that for the next millennium, visitors from across the galaxy would walk through halls dedicated to that species and understand their importance. Had been tasked with analyzing the data and presenting his recommendation to the council. The work should have been simple. His algorithms were perfect. His methodology was beyond question. He had expected the results to confirm what everyone already believed. The ETH had invented fold space navigation. Before their breakthrough, travel between stars took generations. After it, journeys that once consumed lifetimes could be completed in days. Surely the wings would go to them. Or perhaps the harmonics, whose universal translation matrices allowed species with completely different sensory systems to understand one another. Before their invention, diplomatic meetings required decades of preliminary work just to establish basic communication. After it, a being of pure sound could speak directly with a creature of magnetic fields. These were the candidates the council expected. These were the names that would cause no controversy. But algorithms kept returning a different answer. He ran the calculations again. He adjusted his parameters. He checked for errors in his data collection. He examined his own crystalline matrices for signs of degradation. Everything was in perfect order, and the answer remained the same. Humanity. The archivist stood motionless in his private laboratory, staring at the results projected in the air before him. The word hung there, glowing softly, refusing to change no matter how long he looked at it. This was impossible. Humans had been spacefaring for only 200 years. In galactic terms, they had barely learned to walk. The ETH had been traveling between stars when humans were still discovering fire. The harmonics had achieved universal communication when humans were still struggling to understand their immediate neighbors on their own small world. Yet the data did not care about history or expectations. The data only cared about impact. Examine the numbers more closely. Human patents did not simply exist in the archive's records. They spread. They spawned derivative technologies across every sector of galactic commerce. A single human invention would generate dozens of adaptations by other species. Those adaptations would generate further innovations, and those innovations would spread further still. The pattern was unmistakable. Human ideas did not stay contained. They leaked into everything they touched, transforming systems that had been stable for. The archivist left his laboratory and walked through the archive's endless halls, trying to understand what he was seeing. He passed wings dedicated to the great inventors of ages past. He moved through galleries showcasing tools that had shaped entire civilizations. Everywhere he looked, he now noticed something he had never paid attention to before. Human fingerprints. A ETH navigation system that had been improved using principles from a human patent. a harmonic translation matrix that incorporated human algorithms for processing emotion, agricultural equipment from the collective that used human designs for soil analysis, medical devices from the synthesis that employed human techniques for pain management. The humans had been here for only 2 centuries, and already they were everywhere. His crystalline body hummed with confusion. This should not be possible. The elder races had developed their technologies over thousands of years of careful refinement. Humans were newcomers, regarded by most as clever mimics at best. The common wisdom held that humans succeeded only by copying what others had already invented. They were reverse engineers, not innovators. But reverse engineering did not explain what was seeing. These patents were not copies. They were new ideas that no other species had conceived, and those new ideas kept connecting with existing technologies in ways that made everything work better. The archivist spent 3 days reviewing the evidence. He cross-referenced human patents with their galactic derivatives. He traced the flow of influence from Earth's children to the oldest civilizations. He mapped the spread of human ideas across commercial networks, scientific communities, and industrial systems. By the end of his analysis, had discovered something that troubled him deeply. Humans did not just invent things. They invented categories of things that should not exist. Take their concept of the before humans, most species designed their technologies to work correctly. If something malfunctioned, the technology simply stopped functioning. But humans assumed that everything would eventually fail, often catastrophically. So they invented systems designed to fail in specific ways, ways that minimized harm and allowed for recovery. This single concept had revolutionized safety protocols across the galaxy. Or consider their approach to what they called user error. Most species designed technology for the user they expected to have, a careful, rational being who followed instructions properly. Humans designed technology for idiots. They assumed their users would do everything wrong, often on purpose, and built their systems to survive the abuse. Other species had been horrified by this philosophy until they tried it. Now it was standard practice throughout civilized space. Realized that he was not simply looking at a collection of clever inventions. He was looking at a fundamentally different approach to existence. Humans did not invent things because they wanted to improve the universe. They invented things because they could not tolerate the universe as it was. Every human patent was a rebellion. The archivist knew he had to present his findings to the council. He also knew that his recommendation would cause chaos. The elder races had spent 2 centuries dismissing humanity. To suddenly elevate them above the eth and the harmonics would be seen as an insult, a political manipulation, or evidence of corruption. But had served the archive for 700 years. He had dedicated his existence to truth. The data was clear, and he would not lie about it simply to preserve the comfort of beings too proud to accept what the numbers showed. He requested an audience with the governing council. The request was granted immediately. His reputation ensured that his analyses were taken seriously. The council members gathered in the archive's central atrium, a vast space where holographic representations of 10 million patents drifted through the air like luminous snow. Each point of light represented an idea that had changed the galaxy in some small way. Together, they formed a constellation of progress spanning ages beyond counting. 12 elder beings waited for his report. They represented the oldest and most respected civilizations in known space. The eth delegate flickered with impatience, confident that the honor would go to her people. The harmonic representative hummed with quiet anticipation. Others sat or stood or floated according to their various anatomies, all expecting confirmation of their importance. Stood before them and felt the weight of what he was about to say. He activated his presentation, and the lights in the atrium shifted. The drifting patents reorganized themselves, sorting by origin and influence. Lines of connection appeared between them, showing how ideas had spread from one civilization to another. And in the center of the display, glowing brighter than any other source, was a small blue world called Earth. The council members stared at the image in silence. Began to speak. He knew that by the time he finished, nothing would ever be the same. Part 2. The silence in the atrium lasted for 37 seconds, counted each one, watching the council members process what they were seeing. The holographic display left no room for misunderstanding. Lines of influence spread from Earth like blood vessels through a body, connecting to nearly every major technological system in galactic civilization. Finally, the ETH delegate spoke. Her name was, and her people had invented fold space navigation 4,000 years before humans learned to sail boats. Her voice carried the weight of that history. "This is an error," she said. "Your algorithms must be corrupted." Had expected this response. He had prepared for it carefully. "My methodology is documented in full," he replied. "Any member of the council may review my work. The calculations have been 17 times using independent systems. The result is accurate." "Then your criteria are flawed," countered. "You are measuring the wrong things." "I am measuring impact," said. "The spread of ideas, the transformation of systems, the creation of new possibilities. These are the same criteria we have always used." The harmonic representative, a being of pure organized sound named Chorus of Seven, vibrated with what might have been concern. Perhaps the archivist could explain why these results differ so dramatically from expectations. Appreciated the request. It gave him the opportunity to present his evidence properly. "I will begin with 3 examples," he said. "These human inventions demonstrate patterns that do not exist in the work of any other species." The holographic display shifted again, focusing on a single patent. Technical specifications appeared in multiple formats, translated for each council member's preferred sensory mode. "This is what humans call spite-based propulsion," said. Several council members made sounds of confusion. The term did not translate well into their languages. 47 years ago, a human engineer named approached a ETH research institution with a theoretical proposal. She believed it was possible to create a new form of propulsion using particle interactions that existing physics considered impossible. The ETH scientists reviewed her work and rejected it. They told her that the underlying principles violated fundamental laws of reality. Made a sound of approval. Our scientists were correct to dismiss her. We understood those limitations long before humans existed. They were not correct, said, because did not accept their rejection. According to records recovered from her personal files, she spent the following 40 years working to prove them wrong. Her notes contain a phrase that appears repeatedly, "Watch me." The archivist paused, allowing the translation systems to work through the implications of those words. She succeeded. The drive system she created now powers 60% of civilian freight vessels across the galaxy. It is more efficient than fold space navigation for short-distance travel. It requires less exotic matter to operate, and it functions using principles that ETH physics still cannot fully explain. Fell silent. Her form flickered with something that might have been embarrassment or anger or both. This pattern appears repeatedly in human innovation, continued. Humans are told that something cannot be done. Instead of accepting this limitation, they become determined to overcome it. The rejection itself becomes fuel for their creativity. They do not simply want to solve problems. They want to prove their doubters wrong. He shifted the display to the second example. This is the consensus interrupt protocol. The specifications appeared, showing a communication system of elegant complexity. Several council members leaned forward with interest. This technology was widely used, but few understood its origins. Before humans joined galactic society, all artificial intelligence systems operated on what we call harmony-based architecture. Synthetic minds were designed to eliminate internal conflict. Disagreement was treated as malfunction. When AI systems encountered contradictory data, they resolved the contradiction automatically, choosing the interpretation that maintained maximum stability. Chorus of Seven hummed in recognition. This was considered ideal. Conflict causes inefficiency. Humans disagreed, said. They found harmony-based AI deeply unsettling. According to their cultural records, they did not trust machines that always agreed with them. They believed that genuine intelligence required the capacity for doubt, disagreement, and change. So they invented technology that allows artificial minds to argue. The council members exchanged glances of confusion. The concept seemed absurd. Why would anyone want their machines to fight with themselves? The consensus interrupt protocol allows synthetic intelligences to hold contradictory positions simultaneously, explained. It permits them to experience uncertainty. It gives them the ability to change their conclusions based on new evidence, even when the new evidence contradicts their core programming. Humans designed machines that could be wrong and know they were wrong and choose to be something different. This seems inefficient, observed a council member from the collective, a hive-mind species that valued unity above all else. It is extremely inefficient, agreed. It is also revolutionary. Since the protocol's introduction, synthetic intelligence across 400 worlds has advanced more rapidly than in the previous 10,000 years. AI systems using the protocol have developed genuine creativity. They have produced original art, original philosophy, original science. They have become capable of true innovation rather than simple optimization. He paused, letting the implications settle. Humans did not invent a better machine. They invented a machine that could invent itself. The third example required more delicate handling. Knew it would provoke the strongest reaction, but he also knew it was essential for understanding human innovation. The final example is an invention so simple that several council members may doubt its inclusion in this presentation. It is called an alarm clock. The specifications appeared, showing a device of almost primitive simplicity, a mechanism for making noise at a predetermined time. Several council members made sounds of dismissal or confusion. This device is designed to disrupt a human's sleep, said. It produces an unpleasant sound that forces them to wake before their bodies have finished resting. Why would any being want this? Asked a delegate from the Serene, a species that considered rest sacred. Because humans do not trust themselves to wake naturally for their obligations. They know that their biological instincts will keep them sleeping as long as possible. They know that waking up is difficult and unpleasant. And rather than accepting this limitation, they invented technology to fight against their own nature. The council members stared at the simple device hovering in the display. Understanding began to spread across their faces. This pattern defines all human innovation, said. They do not invent technology to work with their nature. They invent technology to overcome it. They are aware of their own weaknesses, and instead of accepting those weaknesses, they build tools to defeat themselves. He expanded the display, showing hundreds of related patents. Humans invented devices to prevent themselves from eating too much. They invented systems to stop themselves from spending money impulsively. They invented technology to limit their own access to distractions. They created tools to force themselves to exercise, to work, to stay focused, to resist temptation. Every one of these inventions is a weapon that humans use against themselves. This is madness, breathed the delegate from the Serene. No, said. This is why they are so dangerous. Humans assume that nothing will work correctly, including themselves. They plan for failure at every level, and because they plan for failure, they succeed where others do not even try. The council sat in stunned silence, processing what they had learned. Finally spoke. You are suggesting that we honor a species that cannot even trust itself to wake up in the morning. I am suggesting that we honor a species whose distrust of itself has produced more transformative technology in 2 centuries than most civilizations produce in 10,000 years. Their weakness is their strength. Their self-doubt is their engine of creation. They do not accept limits, not even limits they impose on themselves. The archivist dimmed the holographic display. The wings must go to humanity, he said. The data leaves no other conclusion. The debate that followed lasted for 6 days. By the end of it, nothing would ever be the same. Part 3. The 3 wings opened on the anniversary of humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. 200 years earlier, a small vessel from Earth had stumbled into a Eth shipping lane and changed history forever. Now, representatives from every known species gathered at the archive to witness something unprecedented. The crowds filled the corridors leading to the new wings. Beings of light jostled against creatures of stone. Hive minds shared space with solitary wanderers. Species that had been spacefaring for 100,000 years stood beside newcomers who had achieved orbit only decades ago. All of them had come to understand what they had missed. For 2 centuries, humanity had been dismissed. Now the galaxy wanted to know why it had been wrong. Stood at the entrance to the first wing, watching the visitors flow past him. His crystalline form caught the light and scattered it into rainbows, just as it had for 700 years. But something had changed in him since his presentation to the council. He had spent his entire existence cataloging the past. Now he found himself wondering about the future. The first wing was dedicated to what had named Defiance Technologies. Every invention displayed here had been born from being told that something could not be done. The walls held thousands of patents, each one a monument to human stubbornness. Visitors paused before the spite-based propulsion drive, reading the story of and her 40-year mission to prove the Eth wrong. They studied the quantum persistence engine, invented by a human teenager who had been told by her teachers that her ideas were foolish. They examined the recursive healing matrix, created by a doctor who refused to accept that certain injuries were beyond repair. The patterns were undeniable. Humans did their best work when someone told them they would fail. Rejection did not discourage them. It motivated them. Where other species accepted the limits of possibility, humans treated those limits as personal insults. The second wing celebrated what called compassion technologies. These inventions had no commercial purpose. They had been created simply because humans learned that other beings were suffering. The universal nutrient synthesizer hung in the center of the first gallery. A human scientist named Santos had invented it after learning about the drift, a species that could digest almost nothing in the galaxy except a rare mineral found on only 3 worlds. The drift had been slowly starving for. Santos had never met a drift. He had simply heard their story and decided that their suffering was unacceptable. He spent his entire career developing technology to save a species he would never see. Similar stories filled the wing. Humans had invented translation systems for species that communicated through smell. They had created mobility devices for beings whose worlds had different gravity than their own. They had developed communication tools for creatures who existed partially outside normal space and had never been able to speak with anyone. None of these inventions had made anyone rich. Most of them had been given away freely. Humans had created them because they could not tolerate the idea of suffering they might be able to prevent. The third wing was the most controversial, had named it Absurdity Technologies, and the council had nearly rejected his proposal before finally accepting it. The inventions displayed here made no sense to most galactic species, and yet understanding them was essential to understanding humanity. The alarm clock occupied a place of honor. Beside it hung the snooze button, a device that partially defeated the alarm clock's purpose. Humans had invented the snooze button almost immediately after creating the alarm clock because they regretted their invention but could not stop using it. The two devices existed in permanent tension, each one fighting the other, neither one winning. The wing also displayed recreational skydiving equipment, which humans used to fall from great heights for entertainment. It showcased artificial chili pepper flavor compounds, which humans added to their food to cause themselves pain because they enjoyed the sensation. It presented exercise machines designed to exhaust the human body for no productive purpose, and cold water swimming gear for voluntarily entering temperatures that their biology found dangerous. Visitors from other species wandered through the wing in bewilderment. The inventions made no logical sense. Why would any being create tools to fight itself? Why would a species deliberately cause itself discomfort? But the more thoughtful visitors began to understand. Humans did not invent these things despite their absurdity. They invented them because of their absurdity. The human spirit rebelled against comfort as much as it rebelled against limitation. They distrusted ease the same way they distrusted authority. When life became too simple, they invented new challenges simply to have something to overcome. The dedication ceremony took place in the archive's central atrium, where the council had first heard its presentation. The same holographic display still drifted through the air, but now it had been updated to highlight the three new wings. Lines of influence spread from Earth to every corner of the galaxy, glowing brighter than ever. The human ambassador was a small, elderly woman named Dr. Constance. She had been a scientist once, before she entered diplomatic service. Her specialty had been exobiology, the study of life forms beyond Earth. She had spent her youth learning about the galaxy's other species, and she had spent her later years explaining humanity to them. She stood before the assembled representatives and did not seem intimidated by the thousands of beings watching her. Her voice was quiet but carried clearly through the atrium's acoustic systems. "I understand that many of you are confused by these wings," she said. "You expected us to be proud. You expected us to celebrate our achievements. Instead, you see inventions that seem to mock themselves. You see technology designed to fight its creators. You wonder what kind of species would build monuments to its own weakness." She paused, looking out at the crowd. "We invented these things because we are weak," she said. "We are afraid. We are stubborn. We are incapable of accepting limits. Every patent in these wings exists because a human could not tolerate something about the universe or about themselves. Every invention is a rebellion against the way things are." The atrium fell silent, even stopped moving, his crystalline form frozen in attention. "We do not trust ourselves to wake up in the morning," Doctor continued. "We do not trust ourselves to eat the right amount, or save our money wisely, or focus on what matters. We know our own failures better than any other species knows theirs, and instead of accepting those failures, we build machines to fight them." She smiled, and something in her expression made even the oldest council members feel young and uncertain. "That is why our technology spreads. Every species in the galaxy has something it cannot tolerate. Every thinking being has failures it wants to overcome. We simply had the audacity to fight everything at once. We declared war on ourselves, on our nature, on the universe itself. And we have been winning." She gestured toward the three wings. "These are not monuments to our glory. They are monuments to our refusal. We refuse to accept hunger when we can create food. We refuse to accept silence when we can build communication. We refuse to accept death when we can invent healing. And we refuse to accept our own limitations when we can construct tools to transcend them." Doctor lowered her hand. "You have honored us today, and we are grateful. But we did not create these inventions for honor. We created them because we could not stop ourselves. That is the nature of humanity. We see problems that others accept, and we cannot accept them. We see limits that others respect, and we cannot respect them. We see our own weaknesses, and we cannot tolerate them." She smiled again, and this time there was something almost apologetic in her expression. "We will not stop. That is the only warning I can give you. We will keep inventing, Keep pushing, keep refusing to accept what is. Whether that makes us your partners or your problem, I cannot say, but we will not stop. The ceremony ended. The visitors dispersed. The three wings remained open, their patents glowing softly in the archive's eternal light. Watched the human delegation depart and felt something he had never experienced in 700 years of service. It might have been hope, it might have been fear, it might have been both. He checked his records and discovered that during the ceremony, humans had filed 17 new patents. One of them was a device that could translate the emotional content of architecture. Another was a system for allowing artificial gravity to respond to the mood of its users. A third was a tool for converting embarrassment into electrical power. The archivist made a sound like wind through crystal. It might have been a sigh. He began planning the fourth wing. The humans, he knew, would give him plenty of material to work with. That was their nature. They would keep inventing until the universe ran out of problems, and then they would invent new problems just to have something to solve. They could not help themselves. And perhaps thought that was the most human invention of all, the inability to stop.